Thank you, Laska and Corla. To ask the Minister if he's considering extending the enhanced employment wage subsidy scheme supports for childcare providers, and if you make a statement on the matter, Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy. The objective of the employment wage subsidy scheme is to support employment and maintain the link between the employer and employee insofar as is possible. It has been a really important part of our response to the COVID-19 crisis. While the criteria for eligibility for business in general is based on a reduction in turnover as a result of the pandemic, and having regard to the importance of maintaining the provision of childcare facilities so as to enable parents to continue in or to take up positions of employment, the legislation provided that childcare businesses in possession of tax clearance and registered in accordance with Section 58C of the Childcare Act of 1991 are eligible for EWIS. On Budget Day, I announced an extension of the scheme in graduated form until the end of next April. And since the introduction of EWIS, there has been a regular and detailed engagement between my own department and the Department of Children. Analysis undertaken by that department and by Minister O'Gorman informed the approach taken with regard to the childcare sector. So therefore, I just want to assure the Deputy that the childcare sector will continue to benefit from the EWIS exemption until the end of April. As announced by my colleague, Minister O'Gorman, it's intended to put in place a transition fund between May and August 2022, which early learning and childcare providers can access. From September of next year, a new funding stream will be in place to support providers in meeting their operating costs in return for a commitment that fees to parents will not increase. To answer the Deputy's specific question, a coherent approach has been taken with regards to the exit strategy for EWIS and the introduction of a new funding stream for the childcare sector, and as such, therefore, I don't believe there is a need for a further extension of the EWIS programme for the childcare sector, because it should be accommodated between the extension of the scheme that I just mentioned and the work that Minister O'Gorman will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And as you rightly pointed out, this was in response to COVID-19, and I suppose most importantly, keeping people working in that sector there and providing, I suppose, a job and income. I suppose, Minister, just a kind of a higher level thinking of all this, I really do think that this is a sector that we need to demonstrate how we value our whole childcare and early school, that whole sector before primary school, because as we know, they do immense work in terms of educating our young children and preparing them for national school. And equally, we know that during COVID and since that and beyond, we're hemorrhaging staff in that particular sector. And when that happens, women in particular are challenged, and it creates further barriers for them actually taking up positions that you talked about and being able to go back to work and taking up roles outside the home. So I welcome what you're saying here today, Minister, and just in I suppose, your conversations and discussions with Minister O'Gorman, that we take that formal step when we come to the early childcare providers.
Well, it's in recognition of the issues that the Deputy has referred to that we ensure that the childcare sector would be able to participate in the employment wage subsidy scheme, even if particular childcare providers did not meet the revenue decline threshold. And it's also the reason why they're actually the only sector that are referenced in the employment wage subsidy scheme, and a provider, if they're in it now, will continue to be in it until next April, because I know it's a sector that's undergoing huge change at the moment, and I also know that we need a successful and viable sector to support families, particularly when parents make the decision to go back to work or to be in work for some of their working day, to go back to the office, go back into the workplace. So I do believe that between the extension of the scheme that I have confirmed, the continued participation of the childcare sector in this scheme, and then the work that Minister Gorman is doing beyond that, that again, it should meet the issues that the deputies refer to.
Thank you, Minister. As I said, that's very, very welcome. And again, I'm going to take this opportunity, a sort of a whole of government approach when you are around the cabinet table, when there are conversations happening with the Minister for Education and with the Minister for Children, that we do start to look at this whole sector in a very formal setting, and that we do see them as, you know, part of the Department of Education, and that they are teachers and that they are educators, that they provide so much value, and that we need to, I suppose, value them in terms of our state's response to that. But I suppose just to thank you for your reply here tonight. I know that it is a sector, like many sectors across the board, that was very much in jeopardy for a lot of people who do provide the service, and as I said, hemorrhaging staff. But I suppose ultimately women in particular who maybe have lost their jobs or considering going back to work, if they haven't got the childcare providers in place, well, it creates further barriers for them.
Look, again, Deputy, I accept many of the points that you're making there. I know how important the childcare sector is in supporting parents to go back to work, and also in giving young girls and boys, very young children, sometimes the support that they need at the very start of their life. So, look, fully understand that. But, Deputy, I just repeat to you what I just said to Deputy Smyth. I mean, Deputy Smyth made the case there for a whole-of-government approach. I can't give any better example of a whole-of-government approach than saying that the childcare sector will continue to be in the employment wage subsidy scheme, regardless of how an individual childcare provider performs. I mean, access to this scheme, as the deputies will know, has been one of the most raised issues over the era of the pandemic. You've all been aware of the debates that we've had regarding whether sectors should be able to come into schemes, how long they should stay in schemes, the support that they get. And the childcare sector is the only sector that, regardless of the performance of an individual childcare provider, that provider stays in the employment wage subsidy scheme until the end of April.